Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about homeschooling. And my husband and I homeschooled our kids from middle school and up through high school. Actually, it was a combination of homeschooling and private school. And my kids joke about homeschooling and they use that phrase very loosely. But I don't regret pulling them out of public school because it was the best thing that we've ever done. And neither one of them have really been hindered by homeschooling. My daughter and her husband own their own security business where they install security systems for a couple of large corporations that are a national corporation. So my daughter and son-in-law are doing very well. They don't lack for intelligence by any stretch. And for my son, he graduated in December with his PhD in ministerial studies. I don't know exactly the exact PhD he got. My brain doesn't function like it used to, but for my son, the homeschooling didn't affect his intelligence level either. But in my opinion, if you have children, I think homeschooling is the absolute best way to go. I think the next option is private schools, then charter schools, and as a last resort, public schools. And I realize everyone has a different situation, but I know for me personally, I didn't have children for daycare centers and the public school to indoctrinate and raise my children for me. My children were my responsibility, and I took that very seriously. Unfortunately, I still made a fair amount of mistakes in raising my children, and I'll own up to that. But first and foremost, you really need to check your state's rules and regulations as to what they require in homeschooling. I know in the state of Colorado, it's a minimum of 4 hours per day, and they require that you go to a public school for testing at grade 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11, I believe is what it is, to make sure that you're in compliance. Also, the curriculum, you don't have to do traditional public school education curriculum. And that's another nice perk about homeschooling. Your curriculum can be whatever you make it, as long as they are learning their reading, writing, math, science skills, and so on. You also don't need to have your school hours 8 to noon. If they want to sleep till noon, let them sleep till noon, and then have your educational component from 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 or whatever. You don't have to follow the traditional public school education hours and curriculum. You can also get involved in support groups. There are so many options that you can have for support groups. You can go to support groups for math or science or music or reading and writing or whatever. As long as you are doing the majority of homeschooling yourself, you can incorporate different things to help you educate your children. When I homeschooled my kids 32, 33 years ago, there were some support groups, but they were few and far between. So it was between my husband and I teaching our kids, and there were people at the church that we attended that could help us in some of the math and science opportunities to help us get over those subjects that might be a little more complex for us. You can get people from church to help you, any support groups from other 4-H or any number of outside sources that you can get help educating your child. There are other ways to teach your children reading and writing, or math skills, or science skills. You can do gardening, mechanics, electronics, any number of subjects that your child might be interested in to learn those topics. How to balance a checkbook. It doesn't have to be out of a traditional textbook in order to learn any given subject. Take field trips. In Colorado, we have a fair amount of free days to the botanical gardens, to the zoo, museums, national parks, art museums. You can go online and check to see what kind of free days your state offers. And that's another way to get your children involved and active in things that are more interesting than just sitting at your kitchen table reading through a textbook and answering the questions. As important as that is, it's good to mix it up and go on field trips as often as possible and find the ways that you can get out and make it more exciting and fun. Also, if a person has an EBT card, if you don't want to fight the crowds when there's a free day, if you have an EBT card, many of these places will give you a reduced rate on the entrance to the zoo or other museums. So that's an option as well. Some of the perks for homeschooling are the fact that the parent is the one who is in control. Again, I didn't have children so that other people would be raising my kids and indoctrinating them in views or beliefs that I might not agree with. When my husband and I were young and our kids were toddlers, he would go to college and work during the day, and I would work evenings. And there was only about an hour a day where I had to have my neighbor watch our kids for us. And that was something I could live with. But primarily it was my husband and I who raised our kids. And again, I didn't have children so that other people, daycare or the school systems, could raise my kids and teach them belief systems that I may or may not agree with. You don't have to be totally structured in how you teach your children. If you want to teach your kids a couple hours in the morning, take a break, and then do a couple hours in the afternoon, or whatever the schedule that works for you and your family is the best way to teach your child. As far as socialization, I heard a lot of comments being made, well, how are your kids going to become socialized? Aren't they going to be weird? Well, maybe they are. But I think a lot of kids in the public school systems are just as weird or more weird than my kids are when they were homeschooled. So to me, it just is a matter of how weird do you want your kids to be. You can also get them involved in civic groups, or by visiting nursing homes, or by other homeschooling groups. And I think many times kids who have been homeschooled are more well balanced. They can relate to elderly, they can relate to young adults, they can relate to kids their own age, they can relate to kids who have disabilities, mental or physical. And so to me, I think a lot of times, many times, most times, kids that have been homeschooled have better relational skills than kids that are in public schools. There's always the exception to the rule, and I get that. But I think most times homeschooled kids are more well balanced. Also, homeschool kids, for me, in my opinion, can learn their educational system through a biblical worldview. And for me, that is critical, and that's very important. And if you are not a faith-based adult, That's fine. Teach them in the things that you feel are important to you, in your own worldview. Most homeschool kids are better developed. Also, the last point is